I knew shit was sideways when I walked into the Kovali's group boardroom and found a mood board titled Synergy Vibes 2024 that looked like a Pinterest page for a confused golden retriever. That's my life. I'm the process optimization lead, which is corporate speak for the janitor of executive stupidity. I don't plunge toilets, but I do flush bad ideas before they clog the revenue stream, and let me tell you, the pipes in this place are backed up with pure, unadulterated ego. Hey, before I get into how I accidentally toppled a dynasty with a piece of jewelry, do me a solid, hit subscribe and upvote. It fuels my caffeine addiction and keeps the legal team nervous. 95% of you just listen and run, don't be that guy. Be the guy who leaves a small click tip. All right, back to the carnage. I've been at Kovali's for 5 years. It's one of those legacy firms in Dallas that started with steel and ended up trading data futures, or whatever the hell we actually sell. I don't ask questions about the product. I just make sure the spreadsheets don't lie. I'm the person you call when the numbers don't add up or when the VP of sales tries to expense a team-building trip to a strip club in Vegas as stakeholder engagement. I'm the mechanic. I pop the hood, look at the smoking engine, and tell them they're idiots. They pay me well enough to afford a mortgage and a decent bottle of bourbon, so I stay. But the ecosystem changed 6 months ago. That's when Avery showed up. Avery is the CEO's niece. She's 24, has a degree in communications from a university that probably accepts crayons on the application, and her job title is Strategic Vision Coordinator. Do you know what that means? Neither does she. It means she walks around the office holding an iced latte that costs more than my hourly rate in 1999, making suggestions that usually involve changing the font on a report I spent 3 weeks building. She's a human glitter bomb, shiny, invasive, and impossible to clean up after. I was sitting in my cubicle, which is strategically located behind a structural pillar so I don't have to make eye contact with the marketing team. And Avery clacked in. You can always hear her coming. She wears these heels that sound like a tactical assault on the linoleum. Karen, she chirped. It wasn't a greeting, it was a summons. She leaned against my partition, smelling like expensive vanilla and unearned confidence. Quick question. Why is the Q3 forecast so gray? I slowly rotated my chair. My joints popped. I'm 45 and my patience is older than that. It's a spreadsheet, Avery. It's black and white. That's how numbers work. They aren't mood rings. Right, but it's just not giving success, you know? She took a sip of her latte, leaving a lipstick stain on the straw that matched her nails. I was thinking we could color code the revenue streams. Maybe a sunset gradient? Uncle Phil loves sunsets. Uncle Phil, the CEO. The man who thinks process optimization is a type of yoga. Avery, I said, my voice dropping to that register I use when I'm explaining why you can't put metal in a microwave. If I add a sunset gradient to the financial audit, the IRS isn't going to think it's pretty. They're going to think we're cooking the books on acid. Leave the formatting alone. She rolled her eyes. It was a practiced motion, something she probably perfected in a sorority house mirror while complaining about the quality of the cocaine. God, you're so analog, Karen. You need to vibrate higher. She pushed off my desk, knocking over a stack of invoices I had just reconciled. She didn't apologize. She didn't even look down. She just strutted away, texting someone on a phone that had a case bigger than her head. I looked at the invoices scattered on the floor. This was the routine. I build the house, they spray paint graffiti on the walls and call it renovation. Most people would snap. They'd storm into HR and file a complaint. But I know better. HR in a family-run company is just a suggestion box that feeds directly into the paper shredder. You don't fight the niece, you survive her. You keep your head down, you fix the leaks, and you wait for the rust to eat them alive. I picked up the papers one by one. I'm used to cleaning up. My dad, Alan, was a mechanic for real. Not a corporate one like me, but a grease under the fingernails, pack of reds in the sleeve guy. He taught me that machines don't care who your daddy is. If you don't maintain the pressure, the boiler explodes. It doesn't matter if the CEO is standing next to it or the janitor. Physics is the great equalizer. In Kovali's group, this place was a boiler with the safety valve taped shut. I went back to work. I had a meeting later that afternoon with a prospective client, some billionaire named Dorian Fleet, who was rumored to be buying a 20% stake in the company. The office was buzzing. People were running around like headless chickens trying to look busy. The marketing team was blowing up balloons for a billionaire investor, and the sales guys were practicing their golf swings in the hallway. I just opened Excel. I had data to scrub. Around 2 p.m., I went to the break room to refill my coffee. The coffee at Kovali's is sludge. It tastes like burnt rubber and despair, but it's free and it's hot. I was standing there, staring at the microwave, watching the seconds tick down on someone's reheating fish taco, because there's always one sociopath in every office, when Avery walked in again. She was with 2 of her minions, junior associates she'd poached from actual work to follow her around and laugh at her jokes. She saw me and stopped. A smirk curled up her face, toxic and sweet. Karen, she said, loud enough for the whole room to hear. I was just telling the girls about your vibe. It's so retro, like I gave up on my dreams in 2004 chic. Her minions giggled. I poured my coffee. I didn't turn around. You need something, Avery, or are you just narrating my life for sport? I just think it's cute, she continued, stepping closer. How you just exist here, like furniture. I turned then. My hand was wrapped around my mug. On my ring finger, the fluorescent light caught the dull glint of silver. Avery's eyes dropped to my hand. She squinted. And that ring, she laughed, pointing a perfectly manicured finger. God, Karen, did you get that out of a gumball machine? It looks like something a trucker would trade for a pack of gum. The room went quiet, not the respectful quiet of a library, but the awkward quiet of a car crash. The minions covered their mouths. I looked down at the ring. It was heavy, sterling silver, engraved with a pattern of gears and ivy, worn smooth by 50 years of friction. It wasn't jewelry. It was a knuckle duster disguised as a keepsake. I looked up at Avery. I didn't smile. I didn't frown. I just looked at her with the flat, dead eyes of a woman who knows exactly where the bodies are buried because she dug the holes. It has sentimental value, I said, my voice gravel. Sentimental? Avery scoffed. Please, it's scrap metal. You should melt it down. Maybe buy yourself a personality. She spun around, her hair whipping the air, and marched out, her minions trailing in her wake like exhaust fumes. I stood there for a long moment. My pulse wasn't racing. I wasn't crying. I took a sip of the burnt coffee. It tasted like gasoline. I like gasoline. It meant something was about to burn. That ring wasn't from a vending machine. It was from a dead man's hand. My dad, Alan Harwood, wasn't a soft man. He was made of callus and cough suppressants. He didn't hug, he fixed things. If my bike broke, he didn't buy me a new one. He handed me a wrench and told me to figure out the torque ratio. When he died, he didn't leave a portfolio of stocks or a summer home in the Hamptons. He left a garage full of half-restored engines and this ring. He wore it every day. It was custom-made, he told me once. Forged in the fire just like us, Car Bear. He'd tap it against the table when he was thinking. Clink, clink, clink. Sound of a problem being solved. When the cancer finally ate the last of him, I took it off his finger. It was still warm. I had it resized, but I kept the grit. I didn't polish it. I liked the scratches. Each scratch was a story of him busting his knuckles to put food on my table. Avery calling it scrap metal didn't hurt my feelings. It insulted my religion, and my religion is competence. I went back to my desk and sat in the silence of my rage. It wasn't a hot, screaming rage. It was a cold, calculated assessment of structural weakness. Avery was a rust spot, and you don't paint over rust. You grind it out. The afternoon wore on. The office energy shifted from panic to hysteria. The billionaire was coming, Dorian Fleet. If you don't know the name, Dorian Fleet is the kind of guy who buys companies just to dismantle them for spare parts. He's a venture capitalist vulture, but the classy kind. The kind that wears bespoke suits while he eats your liver. He was looking to acquire a minority stake in Covalis, which meant an influx of cash that Uncle Phil desperately needed because, rumor had it, he'd bet the Q2 profits on some crypto scam his golf buddy pitched him. At 3:00 p.m., the summons came. All senior staff to the war room. I'm not technically senior staff in terms of title, but I'm the only one who knows how to project the financial models without crashing the server, so I was required. I grabbed my laptop and my notebook, a battered leather thing, not an iPad, and headed to the conference room. It was a scene. The table was mahogany, polished to a mirror shine that reflected the desperation in everyone's faces. Uncle Phil sat at the head, sweating through his dress shirt. He looked like a ham that had been left out in the sun. Next to him was Avery. She had changed. She was wearing a power suit that looked like it was made out of aluminum foil and hopes. She was manic, arranging a stack of color-coded binders that I knew for a fact contained zero actual data. Karen, Phil barked when I walked in. Did you fix the projector? Avery says the vibes were off in the HDMI cable. The cables don't have vibes, Phil, I said, plugging in. They have pins. I fixed it. Great, great. Now sit in the back. Don't speak unless asked. We need to present a youthful, dynamic front to Mr. Fleet. Energy, synergy, disruption. I sat in the corner in the shadows just the way I like it. I opened my laptop and pulled up the real numbers, just in case the youthful dynamic decided to drive the presentation off a cliff. At 3:15 p.m. precisely, the doors opened. The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Dorian Fleet walked in. He wasn't what I expected. I expected a tech bro in a hoodie or a dusty old banker. He was neither. He looked like a retired hitman. Tall, sharp features, gray hair cut with military precision. He wore a suit that cost more than my house, but he wore it carelessly like it was just a uniform. He didn't smile. He didn't shake hands. He just walked to the empty chair opposite Phil, sat down, and placed a single, slim folder on the table. His eyes scanned the room. They were predatory. They swept over Phil's sweating face, over the marketing team's balloons, over Avery's shiny binders. Then, for a split second, they landed on me in the corner. He paused. A flicker of something, confusion, recognition, crossed his face. Then it was gone. Mr. Fleet, Phil boomed, his voice cracking. Welcome to Covalis. We are so thrilled to skip the foreplay, Phil, Dorian said. His voice was quiet, deep, and absolutely terrifying. I have 45 minutes before I have to be in Tokyo via Zoom. Show me why I shouldn't let this company go bankrupt and buy the IP at auction for pennies. Phil turned pale. He looked at Avery. Avery, go, the presentation. Avery stood up. This was her moment. She flashed a smile that was all teeth and whitening strips. Mr. Fleet, she purred, clicking a remote. The screen behind her exploded into a kaleidoscope of meaningless charts. Here at Covellies, we aren't just a company, we're a family. We believe in organic growth, holistic synergy, and leveraging our core competencies to ideate the future. I physically winced. Ideate the future. It sounded like something a cult leader would say before passing out the Kool-Aid. Dorian didn't blink. He stared at her. Avery, I'm the strategic vision coordinator. Right, Dorian said dryly. And what exactly is your strategy for the 14% drop in operational efficiency over the last 3 quarters? Avery froze. The smile faltered. She hadn't prepared for numbers. She had prepared for vibes. Well, she stammered, flipping a page in her binder. We feel that the efficiency metrics are antiquated. We're pivoting to a more employee-centric happiness model. Happiness doesn't pay dividends, Dorian said. He leaned forward. I'm looking at your process flow. It's a mess. Who handles your optimization? Avery looked at Phil. Phil looked at the table. I do, I said from the corner. Dorian's head snapped toward me. The room went silent. Avery shot me a look that screamed, "Shut up, you peasant." You? Dorian asked. Karen Harwood, I said, not standing up. Process lead. And the efficiency drop isn't because of happiness. It's because we switched supply chain vendors to a company owned by Phil's brother-in-law, which increased lead times by 22%. Phil made a choking sound. Avery's mouth dropped open. Dorian stared at me. A slow, shark-like smile touched his lips. Come closer, Miss Harwood, he said. I want to see your data. I stood up. I walked toward the table. I placed my hand on the mahogany surface to lean in and point at a figure on the screen. My hand, the hand with the ring. Dorian's eyes went to the screen, then down to my hand. He froze. He stopped breathing. The silence in the room changed texture. It went from awkward to heavy. He reached out, his hand hovering over mine. He wasn't looking at the data anymore. He was staring at the battered, scratched silver ring on my finger. Where did you get that? He whispered. The menace was gone from his voice, replaced by something that sounded like shock. Avery laughed, a nervous, jagged sound. Oh, ignore that, Mr. Fleet. It's just some junk she, quiet, Dorian snapped. Without looking at her, he didn't raise his voice, but the word hit her like a slap. He looked up at me, his eyes intense. I asked you a question. Where did you get that ring? I looked him dead in the eye. I didn't know why he cared, but I wasn't going to lie. It was my father's, I said, Alan Harwood. Dorian sat back in his chair. He looked like he'd been punched in the gut. He looked from me to the ring and then to Phil. Alan Harwood, he repeated. He let out a long breath. Well, that explains the competence. He looked at me again. You have no idea, do you? Idea about what? I asked. If you're Alan Harwood's daughter, Dorian said, his voice ringing clearly in the silent room, and you hold that ring, then you aren't the process lead. He paused for effect. You're the majority heir to this entire company. The silence that followed was absolute. It was the kind of silence you get after a bomb goes off before the screaming starts. Uncle Phil looked like he was having a stroke. His face went from ham pink to ash gray. Avery looked like someone had just told her that Gucci was discontinued. Her eyes darted between me and Dorian, trying to process the words, but the processor was offline. Excuse me, Avery squeaked. Heir, she's the IT lady. She fixes the printer. Dorian ignored her. He stood up, buttoning his jacket. This meeting is over. Everyone out, except Miss Harwood. Now see here. Dorian, Phil sputtered, trying to regain some semblance of authority. You can't just dismiss my board in my own building. Alan Harwood was a mechanic, a grease monkey. He fixed the boilers in the 80s. Dorian turned on Phil slowly. Alan Harwood was the silent partner who patented the thermal regulation algorithm that this entire company is built on. You built the shell, Phil. Alan built the engine. And you know damn well what the founding charter says. Phil slumped back in his chair. He knew. The realization washed over him and he looked small, defeated. Out, Dorian said again. They scrambled. Avery shot me a look of pure distilled venom as she grabbed her binders, but she left. The door clicked shut. It was just me and the billionaire. I didn't sit down. I crossed my arms. All right, I said. Cut the crap. What is this, a prank? Am I on a reality show? Dorian walked over to the window, looking out at the Dallas skyline. He pulled a silver cigarette case from his pocket. Do you mind? I smoke Marlboro Reds in my truck on lunch break, I said. I think I can handle secondhand vapors. He chuckled, a dry, rusty sound. Alan smoked Reds, filthy habit. I told him it would kill him. It did, I said flatly. Dorian turned back to me. I'm sorry. He was a singular man. We started Covellies together, 40 years ago, in a garage in Dayton. Phil was the money man. He had the inheritance. I was the strategy. But Alan was the genius. He wrote the code for the intake systems on napkins. He designed the hardware with scrap metal. He never told me, I said. He just said he worked maintenance. He hated the suits, Dorian said, gesturing vaguely at the boardroom. He hated the politics. When we went public, he refused the shares, said he didn't want to be a paper pusher. He took a cash buyout and walked away, or so we thought. Dorian sat on the edge of the table, but he didn't trust Phil. He knew Phil was a corner cutter, so he made a stipulation in the charter, a dead man's switch. He kept a 51% controlling interest in a dormant trust, locked behind a physical key. He pointed to my hand. The ring? I asked, looking at the beat-up silver. You're telling me this ring is a key? It's jewelry, not a USB drive. It's not digital, Karen. It's symbolic, but legally binding. The charter states that the trust activates only when the bearer of the founder seal is recognized by a fellow founding partner. That clause was buried so deep even the IRS missed it. It was Alan's way of ensuring that if the company ever lost its way, his bloodline could step in and reset the breaker. My head was spinning. It was absurd. It was something out of a bad movie. But it also sounded exactly like my dad. He loved fail-safes. He loved hidden latches and secret compartments. So I said, trying to steady my voice, "Because you recognize the ring?" I triggered the clause, Dorian said. "As of 10 minutes ago, when I acknowledged you as Alan's heir in front of witnesses, the trust unlocked. You own 51% of Kovali's group. Phil owns 30%, the public owns the rest." I sank into a chair. I own the company? Technically, yes. Effectively, not until we file the paperwork. But the law is on your side. Suddenly, the door burst open. Avery marched in, phone in hand. She had clearly been rallying courage in the hallway. "This is ridiculous," she shouted. "I just Googled it. There's no Alan Harwood on the board list. You're lying. She's just a sad, middle-aged woman who..." Dorian didn't even look at her. "Karen," he said to me, "would you like to handle this, or should I?" I looked at Avery. She was vibrating with entitlement. She looked at me like I was dirt on her shoe. For 5 years, I had fixed her mistakes. I had covered for her incompetence. I had listened to her mock my clothes, my car, and my life. She had called my father's ring trash. Something inside me clicked. It was the sound of a safety valve finally blowing. I stood up. I walked over to Avery. I was taller than her when she wasn't wearing those ridiculous stilts she called shoes. "Avery," I said. My voice was calm. Dangerously calm. "What?" she snapped. "Are you going to fix the AC because it's hot in here?" "No," I said. "I'm going to optimize the process." I turned to Dorian. "How fast can we get legal here?" Dorian checked his watch. "My team is already in the lobby. They travel with me." "Good," I said. I looked back at Avery. "Get out of my office." "Your office?" She laughed. "This is the boardroom." "Exactly," I said. "And I'm the chairwoman. Get out. And take your mood board with you." Avery stared at me, mouth agape. She looked to Dorian for help, but he was just smiling that shark smile. "You heard the lady," Dorian said. Avery stomped her foot, literally stomped it like a toddler, and ran out. I looked at Dorian. "I need a cigarette." "Me too," he said. We didn't smoke in the boardroom. We went to the roof. The roof of the Kovali's building is a gravel-covered wasteland of HVAC units and pigeon crap. It's my favorite place in the building. I know every chiller unit up here by serial number. I know which intake fan rattles when the wind hits north-northeast. It was fitting that I became a billionaire, or whatever I was now, standing next to a rusted cooling tower. Dorian's legal team had arrived within minutes. They were a phalanx of identical suits, carrying briefcases that probably contained more billable hours than I'd earned in a lifetime. They set up shop in the lounge, the glass-walled executive waiting area that Phil used for drinking scotch at 10 a.m. But I needed air first. I leaned against the parapet, lighting a Marlboro with shaking hands. The wind whipped my hair across my face. "He never wanted this for you, you know," Dorian said, joining me. He didn't light up. He just held his silver case like a talisman. "What? To be rich?" I exhaled smoke, watching it dissipate over the gray Dallas city. "To be one of us," Dorian corrected. "He thought corporate life was a disease. He wanted you to have a trade, a skill, something real. So he let me struggle?" I asked, a hint of bitterness creeping in. "I've been scraping by on a mid-level salary, driving a 2014 Ford while he was sitting on a dormant empire." "Why?" "Protection," Dorian said. "If he had given you the shares when you were 20, Phil would have eaten you alive. He would have manipulated you, diluted your stock, or bought you out for pennies." Alan knew Phil. He knew Phil couldn't resist a worker, so he let you work. He let you learn the machine from the inside. He paused, looking at me. "And it worked, didn't it? You know where the bodies are buried because you're the one who had to clean up the blood." I laughed. It was a dark sound. "I know every line of code in the logistics server. I know that Phil pays for his mistress's condo through a shell company listed as consulting fees. I know Avery's degree is from a diploma mill in the Caribbean." Dorian raised an eyebrow. "You have proof?" "I have backups," I said. "I'm the IT lead. I back up everything." "Paranoia is best practice." Dorian smiled. "Alan raised you well." We went back inside. The legal team was ready. They had spread the documents out on the glass table. It was surreal. There, on yellowed legal paper dated 1984, was my father's signature. It was jagged, rushed, like he just wanted to sign and get back to the garage. "The Harwood Trust, effective upon identification of the heir by a founding member. 51% controlling interest, it's ironclad," the lead lawyer said. He looked at me with a mixture of fear and respect. Lawyers smell power like sharks smell blood, and suddenly I was the biggest fish in the tank. The recognition event was witnessed. The ring matches the description in the addendum: sterling silver, custom forge, gear motif. "It's done. You are the majority shareholder." "What about Phil?" I asked. "Phil is currently vomiting in his office," the lawyer said dryly. "But legally, he's a minority partner. He serves at your pleasure. You can vote him out. You can fire him. You can dissolve the board." I ran my finger over my dad's signature. Alan Harwood. He had played the longest con in history. He had planted a seed 40 years ago and waited for the perfect storm to water it. And Avery, I asked. Dorian leaned in. That's up to you. She's an employee, an at-will employee. I thought about Avery. I thought about the butt scrunch leggings comment. I thought about the mood boards. I thought about the way she treated the janitorial staff like they were invisible. Not yet, I said. Firing her is too easy. She thinks she's a visionary. Let's see how she handles actual vision. What's the play? Dorian asked. I looked at the lawyer. Draft a memo. Effective immediately. The Office of Process Optimization is assuming direct control of all executive operations. All departmental spend over $50 requires my signature. All strategic initiatives must be vetted by me. The lawyer blinked. You're putting the CEO on an allowance? I'm putting the whole company on a performance improvement plan, I said. If they want to act like children, I'm going to treat them like children. No more mood boards, no more retreats. We're going to audit the hell out of this place. Dorian chuckled. You're going to make them miserable. No, I said, standing up and smoothing my skirt. I'm going to make them work, and to people like Avery, that's a fate worse than death. I walked out of the lounge. The hallway was quiet. People were peeking out of their cubicles. Word had spread. The rumor mill moves faster than fiber optics. I walked past the break room. The microwave was still beeping. I walked to my desk. My crappy cubicle behind the pillar. I didn't pack up. I sat down. I had work to do. By the next morning, the atmosphere in the office had shifted from panic to haunted house. I walked in at 8 a.m. sharp. Usually nobody acknowledges me until something breaks. Today, the security guard at the front desk stood up and tipped his hat. Morning, Miss Harwood. Morning, Dave, I said. Your badge reader is lagging again. I'll reset the controller later. He looked terrified. You don't have to do that, ma'am. I can call maintenance. I am maintenance, Dave, I said, walking through the turnstile. When I got to my floor, it was eerily quiet. My cubicle had been altered. Someone had placed a vase of flowers on my desk. Cheap carnations, probably from the gas station. There was a card, so happy for you. The Sunshine Committee. The Sunshine Committee was Linda from HR. Linda was a woman whose smile was so tight it looked like it caused her physical pain. She was Phil's enforcer. If Phil was the hammer, Linda was the velvet glove that strangled you. My phone rang. It was Linda. Karen, she chirped, or should I say Miss Harwood? Ha. Listen, Phil and I were hoping to have a little sync-up. Just a quick touch base about transitions. I'm busy, Linda, I said, logging into my computer. I now had admin rights to everything. And I mean everything. Little lock icons on the folders were all green open padlocks. It was beautiful, oh, of course. But Phil is really insistent. He's in the executive suite. Tell Phil I'm auditing the expense reports from 2018 to present, I said. If he wants to talk, he can come to my cubicle. There was a long silence. Your cubicle? Yes, the one behind the pillar. Tell him to bring a chair. I only have one. I hung up. I spent the next 2 hours digging. Now that I knew what to look for, the corruption wasn't even subtle. It was lazy. Phil had been draining the company dry, consulting fees to a firm in the Caymans. Marketing research paid to Avery's LLC. Avery, I pulled up her file. Salary, $180,000. Job description, to facilitate cross-functional synergy and elevate brand resonance. Experience, social media manager for Kappa Kappa Gamma, 2019. I laughed. A dry, hacking laugh. I was making $65,000 to keep the servers from melting, and she was making triple that to post selfies. Around 10:30, I heard the footsteps. Heavy, angry footsteps. Phil rounded the corner. He wasn't wearing his jacket. His tie was loosened. He looked like a man who hadn't slept. Behind him trailed Avery, looking less shiny than yesterday. She was wearing sunglasses indoors. Karen, Phil hissed, leaning over my partition. What is the meaning of this? You can't demand the CEO come to a cubicle? I didn't look up from my monitors. I'm reviewing the travel budget, Phil. Did you know we spent $40,000 on client entertainment in Miami last month? Who is the client? Because the receipt is from a club called the Boom Boom Room. Phil turned a shade of purple that shouldn't exist in nature. That was confidential business development. It's fraud, Phil, I said calmly. And since I'm the majority shareholder, that's my money you're stuffing into G-strings. Avery piped up. You can't talk to him like that. He's your boss. I spun my chair around. Actually, Avery, according to the bylaws, which I just read, the majority shareholder has the right to freeze executive assets pending an internal audit, which I did. About 10 minutes ago. Phil's eyes bulged. You froze the accounts? Company credit cards are suspended, I said. Also, I revoked your parking pass. You're in a visitor spot now. Hope you paid the meter. They tow after 2 hours. You bitch. Avery screamed. She lunged forward, but Phil held her back. Avery, stop. Phil was sweating profusely. He realized the gravity of the situation. He wasn't dealing with an employee anymore. He was dealing with a hostile takeover from the inside. Karen, Phil said, his voice trembling. Let's be reasonable. We can work this out. A raise, a bonus, a corner office. I don't want a corner office, I said. I like this spot. It's near the server room. The hum soothes me. I stood up. I want you to resign, Phil. Resign? He laughed nervously. You can't be serious. I built this brand. You built a shell, I corrected, using Dorian's words. And now the shell is cracking. You have 2 choices. Resign with a severance package that I will determine based on how much you actually stole. Or I release the Boom Boom Room receipts to the board and the IRS. Phil looked at Avery. Avery looked at her phone. I need time, Phil whispered. You have until 5 p.m., I said. Now get out of my cubicle, you're blocking my light. They retreated. It was a rout. I sat back down. My hands were shaking slightly, not from fear, from adrenaline. It was the same feeling I got when I finally traced a complex electrical short after hours of searching. Feeling of finding the fault line. I picked up the phone and dialed Dorian's number. It's done, I said. Phil is crumbling, and the niece, Dorian asked. She's next, I said. I have a special project for her. Power is weird. People think it's about shouting or wearing expensive suits. It's not. Power is having the admin password. I didn't move offices. I stayed in my cubicle. It unnerved them. They had to come down to the floor to see the boss. It was a psychological power move that I didn't even plan. I just was too lazy to move my plants. At 1 p.m., I sent an email to Avery. Subject, Strategic Realignment Special Project 2, Avery Mills at Covelli's Group Com from Karen Harwood at Covelli's Group Com. Avery, since you are the Strategic Vision Coordinator, I have a task that requires your unique skill set. We need to physically audit the archive room in the basement. We have 5,000 boxes of legacy contracts that need to be digitized and tagged for synergy. Report to the basement at 1:30 p.m. No interns. This is sensitive data. Karen, I knew she wouldn't do it. Avery didn't do physical labor. Avery didn't do basements. I pulled up the security camera feed for the basement hallway on my second monitor. I ate my ham sandwich and waited. At 1:45 p.m., Avery appeared on the grainy black and white screen. She was wearing a mask, like a surgical mask, and holding her phone away from her face as if the air itself was infectious. She kicked a box. She took a selfie next to a stack of files with the caption, I checked her Instagram instantly. Grind never stops. CEO life, #hustle #legacy. Then she did exactly what I expected. She didn't open a single box. Instead, she walked over to the fire suppression system panel on the wall. I stopped chewing. The basement held the paper archives, but the server room was directly adjacent. The suppression system was halon gas, safe for electronics, but expensive as hell to refill. But the sprinkler override for the paper archive? That was water. Avery was messing with the valves. She wasn't trying to do the work. She was trying to flood the basement. She probably thought if she ruined the files, have an excuse for not doing the job. Oops, a pipe burst, so tragic, I watched her twist a red valve. She didn't know that I had installed a digital pressure sensor on that valve 3 years ago because the janitor kept bumping it with his mop. A warning light flashed on my dashboard. Water pressure spike zone 4. I could have stopped her. I could have called security, but I wanted to see how far she would go. She twisted it fully open. Nothing happened. She frowned, twisting it back and forth. She kicked the pipe. I chuckled. I had shut off the main water feed to the basement archive 6 months ago because of a leak I hadn't gotten around to fixing yet. The pipes were dry. Avery pulled out her phone and called someone. I tapped into the internal VoIP line. She was calling Phil. Uncle Phil, the pipe won't break, she hissed. What do you mean it won't break? Phil's voice sounded strained. Just open the valve. I did. It's dry. This whole building is garbage. Avery, listen to me. You need to find something on her. Find a compliance violation. Hack her email, something. We need leverage. I can't hack. I don't know how. Then make something up. Plant a file. Say she stole data. Anything. I hit the record button. This was it. The smoking gun. Not only was she incompetent, but she was also actively conspiring to frame the majority shareholder. It was stupid. It was desperate. It was beautiful. I picked up my desk phone and dialed the basement intercom. Avery jumped about 3 feet in the air when my voice boomed through the dusty speakers. Avery, I said, my voice echoing in the concrete room. The water is shut off, but the security cameras aren't. Smile. She looked up at the camera, her face a mask of pure terror. Come upstairs, I said. Bring your badge. Avery arrived at my cubicle 10 minutes later. She had tried to fix her hair, but she looked rattled. Dust from the basement streaked her white blazer. She looked like a fallen angel who had landed in a dumpster. Dorian was there too. He had come down from the lounge to watch the show. He was leaning against the pillar, looking amused. You were spying on me, Avery accused, pointing a finger at me. That's illegal, violation of privacy. It's a secure facility, Avery, I said, not looking up from my screen. You signed the consent form when you took the badge. Paragraph 4, Section C, all activities on company property are subject to monitoring. You should read the things you sign. I was checking the valve, she lied, her eyes wild. I thought it looked loose. I was trying to fix it. Really? I asked. Because I have a recording of you asking your uncle why the pipe wouldn't break. I hit play. The pipe won't break. Just open the valve. We need leverage. The audio was crisp. I had upgraded the microphones myself last year. Avery went pale. She looked at Dorian. Mr. Fleet, surely you can see this is AI. She faked it. Deep fakes. Dorian laughed. It was a genuine laugh this time. You think she deep faked a conspiracy in real time? You give her too much credit and yourself too little. He looked at me. She's all yours, Chairwoman. I stood up. I walked around the desk. I stood in front of Avery. You know, I said quietly. I didn't mind the incompetence. Every company has dead weight. I can carry dead weight. I'm strong. I took a step closer, but I do mind the disrespect. You mocked my father's ring. You mocked my work. You mocked the people who actually keep this lights on. You think you're better than us because of your last name, but names don't keep the boiler running, Avery. Sweat does. I held out my hand, badge, phone, laptop, now. Avery stared at me, her lip trembled. Tears started to well up, big, crocodile tears meant to garner sympathy. But where will I go? She whispered. This is my career. You don't have a career, Avery, I said. You have a nepotism scholarship, and it just expired. She slowly reached into her purse and handed me her badge, then her phone. The laptop is in my office, she sniffled. Security will retrieve it, I said. Dave is waiting for you at the elevator. He has a box for your personal items. You have 5 minutes. She turned to leave, shoulders slumped. Then she stopped and looked back. The venom returned for one last second. You're still just a janitor, she spat. You might own the place, but you'll never fit in. You smell like stale smoke and desperation. I smiled. And you smell like unemployment. Get out, she fled. Dorian clapped slowly. Brutal, I liked it. I'm not done, I said. Phil is next. Phil is in his office shredding documents, Dorian said. My team is already there stopping him. Good, I said. I don't want to fire Phil. Dorian looked surprised. No, I said. Firing him gives him a golden parachute. He has a clause in his contract. If he's terminated without cause, he gets $2 million. And with cause, he gets nothing. Do you have cause? I pointed to my screen where the boom room receipt was still glowing. I have cause. I have 5 years of cause. But I don't want to fire him yet. And what? I want to demote him, I said. I want to put him in the basement. Dorian's eyes widened. You're joking. He started as a manager. He forgot what the work is like. I think he needs a refresher course. I'm going to offer him a choice, immediate termination with legal action for embezzlement, or he becomes the new archive clerk. Dorian stared at me for a moment, then burst out laughing. You are definitely Alan's daughter. That is twisted. It's not twisted, I said, lighting a cigarette right there in the cubicle. It's process optimization. I'm putting the resources where they fit best. The emergency board meeting was scheduled for 4:00 p.m. I didn't change my clothes. I was still wearing my slacks and my cardigan. I didn't want to look like them. I wanted them to know exactly who was beating them. The boardroom was full. The other minority shareholders, mostly Phil's golf buddies, were there, looking confused and nervous. Phil was sitting at the far end of the table. He looked like a man who had aged 10 years in 10 hours. Dorian sat at my right hand. I walked to the head of the table, Phil's chair. Excuse me, Phil, I said. You're in my seat. Phil looked up. His eyes were red. He looked at the other board members, hoping for an ally. Nobody moved. They had seen the legal memos. They knew the score. Phil slowly stood up and moved to a side chair. I sat down. The chair was ergonomic mesh. Too soft? All right, I said, placing my notebook on the table. Let's keep this brief. I have actual work to do. I looked around the table. As of today, the Harwood Trust has exercised its controlling interest. I am the acting CEO and chairwoman of the board. A murmur went through the room. One brave soul, a guy named Chad who wore too much cologne, raised his hand. Karen, no offense, but do you have any executive experience? You're the IT support, right? I looked at Chad. I know that you use your company laptop to mine Dogecoin, Chad. I suggest you stop asking questions before I audit your hard drive. Chad shut up immediately. Now I continued. Regarding Philip, all eyes turned to Phil. We have discovered significant irregularities in the financial reporting, I said, sliding a file folder down the table. Embezzlement, fraud, misuse of corporate funds. The board gasped. Phil put his head in his hands, however. I said, Phil is family, and we value legacy. I looked at Phil. I am offering you a settlement, Phil. You will repay the stolen funds, will garnish your wages, and you will remain employed at Covelli's group. Phil looked up, hope flickering in his eyes. Really? Karen, thank you, I can stay on as? As the archive manager, I said. In the basement. The room went dead silent. The basement? Phil whispered. We have 5,000 boxes that need scanning, I said. It's a big job. It requires synergy. And since Avery is no longer with us, the position is open. Salary is $45,000 a year, no benefits, you start Monday. Phil stared at me. He looked at the folder of evidence, the strip clubs, the shell companies, the fraud. He knew if I went to the police, he was looking at 5 to 10 years in federal prison. Phil swallowed hard. I accept. Good, I said. Don't wear a suit. It's dusty down there. I stood up. Meeting adjourned. Get back to work. I walked out of the room. I could feel their eyes on my back. Fear, respect, terror. It felt good. Dorian walked with me to the elevator. You're terrifying, he said. I'm efficient, I corrected. So what now? You going to buy a yacht, a penthouse? I looked at the elevator buttons. No, I'm going to buy a new AC system for this building. The current one is garbage. Dorian smiled. You know, Alan would have loved this. He would have laughed his ass off. Looked down at the ring. Yeah, he would have. A week later, Dorian insisted on taking me to dinner, not a business dinner, but a victory lap. We went to the most expensive steakhouse in the city, the kind of place where the waiters wear tuxedos and judge your shoes. I wore my work clothes. I didn't care. I owned the company that probably owned the building. We were halfway through our ribeyes when I saw her. Avery, she wasn't eating. She was working. She was the hostess. Apparently, social media skills didn't transfer well to the job market, and her uncle couldn't bail her out anymore because he was currently sorting invoices in a windowless basement. She saw me. She froze. She was holding a stack of menus. I waved, a small, polite wave. She turned red, pivoted, and fled into the kitchen. Was that the niece? Dorian asked, sipping his wine. That was the glitch, I said. Glitch resolved. I took a drink of my bourbon. It was smooth. expensive. But honestly, I missed the burn of the cheap stuff. So Dorian said, "You fixed the company, you purged the rot, you have the power. Are you happy?" I thought about it. Was I happy? I was tired. I had spent the last week firing useless VPs and renegotiating vendor contracts. My back hurt from sitting in the ergonomic chair. But the hum of the office was different now. It wasn't the frantic buzz of anxiety. It was the steady thrum of an engine running clean. Engineers were talking to the sales team. The money was going into R&D, not mood boards. "I'm satisfied," I said. "The system is optimized." Dorian raised his glass to Alan, the mechanic who bought the world. I raised my glass to the ring, the key that started the engine. We drank. Later that night, I drove home in my 2014 Ford. I didn't upgrade my car. I liked knowing the quirks of the transmission. I pulled into my driveway and sat there for a minute, the engine ticking as it cooled. I looked at my hand. The ring caught the light of the street lamp. It was still scratched, still battered, still looked like something from a vending machine, but it was heavy. I took a drag of my cigarette and blew the smoke out the window. Turns out, you can't polish a turd, but you can definitely flush it. And if you have the right wrench, you can rebuild the whole damn bathroom while you're at it. I flicked the butt into the darkness. Back to work tomorrow. Phil probably jammed the scanner again. You're the real MVPs of the office jungle. Thanks for watching. Smash that subscribe button, or the coffee pot might just forget your next brew.